Yeah. Are you on the call?
It's difficult to hear you.
Sorry?
Yeah, it's difficult to hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it better?
Was better this morning.
Okay.
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. Okay. Right. Thanks. Patricia, are you in the call?
Yes, I am.
Very good. Then let's share the slides. Please, Patricia, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of core TSOs involved in the long-term coordinated capacity calculation implementation, I'd like to give you the current status of activities in the LTCC context. So I think it is quite apparent that we will today focus on the capacity calculation part. However, as you can see also on the slides, this is also a bit connected to the decision not to restart the long-term flow-based allocation implementation for 2025 go live. Therefore, TSOs initiated an assessment on what would be the best way forward for the introduction of a coordinated long-term capacity calculation process in core CCR, and what are the next milestones, basically. Plus, this is also then connected to the broader context of a long-term market evolution. While doing this assessment, TSOs actually formulated several objectives that are the underlying assumption for any future implementations and activities for core TSOs in LTCC. So it is mainly to meet the legal obligation to the maximum extent possible with a minimized delay by 2025. So we are targeting a solution that could be perceived as an initial step in the next evolution of long-term markets. Plus, we would like to also provide hedging opportunities to the market parties by offering sufficient and proper level of cross-border capacities, while not forgetting about ensuring operational security in this context. Then I think a natural question is how we would like to do it. So we stay committed to the delivery of scenario-based, flow-based coordinated capacity calculation solution, to which we would like to add the NTC extraction for capacity allocation purposes, to develop the most straightforward, pragmatic, and fast solution. And I think this is really to make sure that we are also oriented on results and process robustness. So we would like to keep good benchmarks and robustness of the process, while bringing together also expectations of market participants or the regulatory authorities and obviously the operational security constraints, as already mentioned. The solution that we are currently assessing and that we propose is built on experience not only with the NTC extraction, but also on the implementations that has taken place thus far for the scenario-based, flow-based coordinated capacity calculation. And as mentioned, we are targeting a viable solution and the earliest possible go live, which at the moment is November 2025 for the yearly auction of 2026. This would be a starting point, and I think if we go to the next slide, it is quite apparent that in order to meet these objectives and the goal, plus and also the commitment, we would like to focus on the following steps. So we started working on the implementation plan, for which we are also further assessing the results with this ATC or NTC extraction, with different parameterization. So we are trying to understand what is the level of freedom, or what are the degrees of freedom to achieve the satisfactory level of offered capacities for market participants. And this should be done by November, basically. So as we speak, we are running several rounds of computations. Then as a next step, naturally, we will also need to see what are the necessary amendments to the current methodological framework for core, but also connected to pan-EU methodologies. And we will also implement the necessary IT changes that are connected to this addition of ATC extraction to the process. In January 2025, we would like to make sure that the extensive capacity calculation simulation results are available, so we can make sure to consult also a broader scope of stakeholders, and we will continue with the internal and external parallel run. I think for market participants, the external parallel run is the main milestone, which aims to start in May 2025. And as already mentioned, then the targeted go live is in November 2025. With this being said, I think it's also important to understand that we see this implementation as a first step in the broader course of changes that are expected for a long-term time frame, and TSOs also remain committed to continue discussions on the target model in parallel with the implementation. But I strongly believe that we need to start somewhere, and this is currently the approach that the long-term capacity calculation experts in core and core TSOs have chosen for long-term. This was maybe faster than expected, but I would certainly encourage questions. We also have TSO experts and representatives in the call.
Yeah, are there any comments, questions? Jerome, please.
Thank you very much, Patricia. So you expect to consult on a proposed methodology somewhere like close to now, October, November, based on some of the assessments that you've made. Did I understand correctly?
So the methodology public consultation would be targeting rather February, March 2025. But obviously, I think the active stakeholder management of results is also one of the key aspects. But if you're asking about the methodology consultation, that would be rather for Q1 2025.
And you said maybe as a follow-up, you said okay that you're testing different parameters to check different levels of available capacity or capacity made
Yes.
available at the very least. Is this something that you want to run informally to stakeholders in general, market participants in particular?
And maybe this is for Stephen Root to also answer. Obviously, once we have the results and these are internally picked up by TSOs, there is a potential to consult market participants, but I would really leave this to the right people to answer.
It makes sense indeed, because one of the reasons why we are in this situation today is because what was happening with the implementation on flow-based allocation was also not satisfactory for the market. And so we are taking kind of the historical values as a benchmark, as our guidance. That's the best guidance that we have. And then it makes a lot of sense that by adding our new step into the process, NTC extraction, that we indeed, as part of public consultation, also get your feedback upon what comes out. And about what is important in terms of, stability of these kind of values. That's also one of the criteria we are putting forward. We try to search for methods, the approach that is not going from 100 to 0 and then back to 50 from 1 year to the next year and the third year. So robustness is also part of our criteria. So yeah, to conclude, for me, it makes sense that we have your feedback on these results as part of the consultation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Zoran, would you like to intervene?
Yes, maybe to repeat what I've already said a few times, also even this week, that we as Acer we strongly support the extension of the long-term flow-based domain with capacities which are based on historical NTCs, at least.
I'm not sure whether I have lost my audio or.
Can you hear
whether
me?
you can still hear me.
We can hear you, Zoran. We
Okay.
can hear you.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
No, this is Patricia, so maybe Zoran, not sure whether you're talking.
Yeah, I'm talking, but yeah, and I can hear you, and the others can hear me.
Here in the room, we can hear you, Zoran.
Ah, okay. But I cannot, unfortunately, so you will need to transcribe for me.
Yeah, okay, no problem. But no point in explaining this in Patricia's direction now, of course. We are in favor of flow-based domain extended on the basis of historical NTCs as at least partial benchmark. However, we are strongly against the conversion of flow-based parameters to NTCs. This is famous potato cutting into cube and would serve only to provide minimum NTC quota per each border, but in essence, it would only shrink the overall offered capacities and of course will shrink the economic surplus when it's compared to flow-based. The idea of using NTC as a benchmark, first of all, it was often mentioned by market participants that it's needed, and we provided Acer simulations already back in 21 and also now very recently, and in all cases it's shown that by extending the flow-based domain with historical NTC corner, even if done only partially, for example only 50% of Germany-Austria border, this ensured fairly high distributed allocation over the core borders. It's not the same as with NTC, but it's much better, let's put it that way, than if we apply only a plain 20%, 30% min-RAM. Needless to say that economic surplus is higher with flow-based. So we have already invited the core TSOs to focus on increasing the size of the flow-based domain and performing sufficient simulations. Also, this intervention would also need an amendment of core LTCCM because unfortunately it's currently not possible to go more than 40%. And but in this way, with such a I would say limited amendment, I'm sure that the implementation can be finished by end of 2025 without legal precedents, without, let's say, wasting time on methodology that does not deliver, to my mind.
Thank you, Zoran. Bent?
Yeah, Zoran, thank you for your feedback. I once would like to highlight that the method in place for capacity calculation, this was approved by ATA, and for us it's a bit surprising that your solution you suggest is artificially enlarging the flow-based domain with historic capacities just to get the allocation part right. And I think the results we had in the past showed that something on the allocation part is not really sufficient. And this was not raised only by TSOs, also I think the market party a lot highlighted this. So I think it, as Patricia said, it would be very much appreciated if even on Acer side, you're not insisting on artificially enlarging the flow-based domain until the allocation seems to be okay, but to accept that this what we are suggesting right now is a first step. It's an intermediate step to start to have a coordinated capacity calculation. And then in further steps, there could be also improvements on the flow-based allocation with minimum capacity or other stuff in the future. But at least to have something what we can start with and what is broadly accepted by market parties and also TSOs. Yeah, maybe you can have a second thought on this.
Yes, but on Patricia's first slide, you can also see that there is an artificial enlarging of these NTCs, neglecting the flow-based calculation results also by the TSOs. And I would ask you to read our decision from 2021 again, where we mentioned many times that there is no danger in higher min-RAM, and TSOs were very concerned about it. And then we also demonstrated that now, practically and implicitly, TSOs offer 85-90% of min-RAM on some connects in the long-term NTC-based world, just it's not as obvious as in the flow-based world. So this solution is indeed a bit extorted from Acer, but when we were faced with, let's say, comment that flow-based does not deliver sufficiently high capacity, there was many comparisons with the NTC world. The only solution is to offer the same level of network security. That means the same level of MIR-RAM. When we do this, we have higher economic surplus, we have higher capacities allocated. Then it's up to TSOs to think about it, how they can offer 90% of MIR-RAM, and they were very concerned when we proposed to increase 20% to 30% back then in 2021.
Yeah, okay. I agree that there are discussions about the right capacities, but I think a major point is that we have the feeling just with giving as much capacity as possible to use this measure to solve the problems we see in the flow-based allocation. It's not the right approach, and there's more time needed to get this right. As I said, maybe with minimum capacities per border or something like this. I think it would be appreciated to have this process to stepwise improve the long-term time frame and not now to push for a solution that is not mature enough to go live next year.
Maybe Pavel, you want to add to this?
Yes. Maybe we can go one slide back also. So I not contradict our slide. So my name is Pavel Zolotarev. I'm now the sponsor of this activity in the core region. So I think we have, let's say, enough time to discuss things with Acer and with the regulatory authorities. And today I would like to hear maybe some more feedback from the, let's say, market parties and stakeholders, also because I'm new personally to this topic. Just to shortly reiterate, let's say, our main focus here. I think it was discussed in the past very extensively, and then also Zoran mentioned some very creative ideas that in the end there are a lot of degrees of freedom to perform, first of all, the capacity calculation itself. And also then we have the topic of the allocation as well. And we can discuss min-RAMs. Is it 10%, 20%, 30, 40, 5, maybe 17 is also okay. Then we are looking at scenarios for the next year. So just for your information, in this year, Germany has already added 8 gigawatts of PV. So you can see how the scenarios are, let's say, also probably not fully representative of the future grid situations. We have outages. We have, let's say, these creative ideas. And for this reason, and due to the fact that the long-term market is of importance, as also the winter 22-23 has showed, we want to, let's say, take a first step, implement a coordinated capacity calculation, and make it, let's say, as robust and stable as possible from the market perspective. So we do not want a revolution in the first step, so to speak, but we want to implement the coordinated capacity calculation to achieve this benefit without a risk of, let's say, bigger market disturbances. This is at least our focus, and what I would like to hear. I know Acer's position very well, I see valid points also in this position, but I would like to hear what is really important for the market participants here, because I think this forum is directed towards this category of stakeholders. Thank you.
Zoran, I also see Jerome here wanting to react. Do you want to?
Yeah, I will try to be brief because indeed we have to hear the stakeholders on the scenarios. Pavel, I'm almost happy that we had the PSC appeal and accepted some points of it during the very lengthy process. I'm not sure that you were there all the time. If 24 scenarios per year, for example, are not sufficient, it is possible that every TSO includes critical elements from their own scenarios, not the whole CGM, not the whole full-fledged capacity calculation for one scenario, but they can add 1, 2, 3, 5 connects that would describe such a scenario, which is important, whether 7 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the evening, if it's not covered by I would say default scenarios. So that side is not under threat, I would say. The network modeling maintenance, exceptional maintenance is not under threat. I think we are covered with that.
Jerome, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And so thanks, Pavel, for calling on us. So first, like if you want to have some historical background, don't hesitate to have a look at the multiple presentations we made at the past meeting.
I did already.
So you have a hint already. Okay, so fundamentally, we've never been super convinced by applying flow-based to a time frame that is actually not allocating flows. But we're particularly worried about the allocation part of flow-based. We've questioned indeed the actual fundamental economic surplus this brings to the forward markets and not just to the option of long-term transmission right. Now, a few things that are important to us, like we see this very massive fight that is coming between Acer and the TSOs on this, including challenges and stuff like that. And this is probably comfortable for nobody. Just a reminder, like this is all supposed to be for the users of the transmission rights. As such, probably neither TSOs nor Acer have a fundamental interest in the existence of long-term transmission rights, but market participants do. So I think I from a general perspective, this idea of the TSO proposal possibly as a first step towards something more elaborate in the future when we've really sorted out all the problems with long-term flow-based may be a good first step indeed. We see also the risks of whatever new methodology being proposed in February, March, or later the next year being rejected by Acer. And this risk of legal deadlock, where TSOs are supposed to implement something that they don't want to implement and that they will not implement, and Acer potentially being quite helpless around this. And I don't know what the position of individual NRAs is on this, but they would need to act. So this is not good in a way that we want a dialogue on this. One thing to keep in mind also, and I hear things around, okay, but possibly some of the solution, and I know Acer has presented some projections with the inclusion of min-RAMs in the calculation aspects, and yeah, I understand now that this would also require a modification of the long-term capacity calculation methodology. So this is also not a simple process. In case flow-based is set up, flow-based allocations in set up, how do we sort out not only this question of available capacity, but also the points that we raised about having an actually sturdy, meaningful solution for the management of collateral by the TSOs that allows us to bid actually at all borders. So all this sounds to me like we're not ready for November 2025 anyway. And making sure that we give ourselves time to resolve conflicts, to have enduring solution, the first step solution, but also possibly second step, third step solutions. Like that would be what I'm after. Having a plan. Reminder, we're already trading those years on the markets. We're already trading Cal 25, of course, but 26, 27 possibly as well. So having a plan and understanding where we're heading is what's important for us. So we're not neutral, and that's why I'm not offering to be a facilitator between the TSOs and Acer on this one. But yeah, a resolution of this conflict would be much welcome.
No, but indeed, I think the main point which I would like to underline, we are not doing this for us in the end. I would also say that the same principle applies for other time frames as well. So we welcome any feedback. Obviously, now we don't have the details yet of the methodology. We are not this far yet in the process, but we will definitely welcome any feedback to our results, to the methodology, which also, let's say, provides a clear indication of what you need from this process. Because otherwise we are just working in a theoretical calculation chamber without no added value.
Then I think this is so far for the exchange on this topic. I don't think there's some kind of further discussion here. Yeah,
Just a technical question that maybe it's only me. I don't know if other market participants are interested. When you do the parallel run, could you publish the algorithm that you use for allocation?
The algorithm, could you publish the algorithm?
The algorithm, at least sort of a, if not the code entirely, but the steps that you follow.
Mm-hmm.
What part? Sorry, I'm not sure.
For allocating capacity as options. So a pseudocode of the steps that will be followed for allocation.
You need to clarify. We are going to do this capacity calculation with, at the end, an NTC extraction step.
Yes.
And so these are the NTCs that we will then see as part of the parallel run. And this is then one-to-one on a broader level. What would be consumed by an NTC allocation? Yeah.
But the target is that at the end of 2025, you move to a capacity calculation, a flow-based allocation.
We want to keep NTC for the long term. That's what I understood. So nothing is changing effectively apart from the values, I suppose.
That's indeed a question mark. What is the future of the flow-based allocation part? Because today, as you heard from the discussions, that is in a deadlock. I'm not going to repeat all the previous discussions, but to give it a future, some improvements anyhow would be needed. And it's very unlikely that that would be there by end of next year. So that's the first step that we focus upon, is how can we still set up this coordinated capacity calculation with the possibility then to feed into the NTC allocation. First step. And then we have to see in parallel what this discussion regarding the allocation brings. And I fully agree with Jerome. This is a discussion that we need to have with the market parties and with NRAs around the table. We have had some workshops, I believe earlier this year, it was in May, if I'm not mistaken, which for me was kind of concluding in the sense that, yeah, there are problems to fix. And And then there was no further progress made on that discussion. And so our request is really indeed for every stakeholder, and we know ESO is already very active in the debate, but we would also like to very much indeed hear on NRA side, because at the end of the day, what we will be submitting as amendments will have to be approved by NRAs to make it feasible for us to implement it. And so we are open to organize these discussions also from core level, to have more active involvement, not only once or twice a year, but with this file that we are willing to host, facilitate, bring around the table, show us the results, and then continue in a constructive way the debate around it.
But my point is, when you show the results, can you show us how you got to that? Because the result that we got probably 1 year ago, we were unable to introduce them.
Indeed, when we will have results with an NTC extraction, we will explain how this NTC extraction works, how we get from our flow-based domain to the NTC values. Yes.
And same for potential expert.
Yes.
Maybe one question on my side. The NTC extraction that is foreseen, is it like the plain NTC extraction, a bit like what we've seen today with for Switzerland, with Central Europe, or the one we see for the intraday, or has it been?
Intraday, indeed.
It's the same one.
Yes.
Because hasn't there been any consideration of looking at market forward signals to somehow extract the NTC in a more economically optimal way? Eventually, you're gonna, by doing the plain extraction, you're gonna create some NTC volumes for some borders that doesn't really require a lot of volumes, and at the expense of some borders where there is large spreads, and that would benefit from more volume. Is there something that is on the table as a remaining in the NTC world, but with some kind of a more economically optimal extraction of the NTCs?
That's indeed a different philosophy and optimization logic, and this is then touching the heart of the debate. What is needed in terms of the forward market and reflecting these type of signals. This is indeed also what TSOs have given as input for the consultation that has been made by European Commission. And also there, we are open to have this debate, but we see it, and this is the debate around the future, around the target model. And realistically speaking, because now we are searching for a solution for next year, whilst this whole impact assessment is ongoing, we know we will not conclude on that debate, and we will be too late. We cannot count on that in order to set our first step. But I very much like your reflection, because this is the direction we believe we need to look into when we discuss a target model.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry?
You raised your hand, or?
I don't know if
no.
I could help technically, but maybe it's not necessary.
No, yeah, let's make the pitch to intraday. Indeed. So let's close the LTC topic. Thank you very much, Patricia.
Thank you, and have a nice rest of the day.
Yeah. And going to intraday, and Bernard, you will first do the follow-up from the last core consultative group. No, you don't have to.
I don't have to push anything. It's automatic.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So because the ITC extraction was mentioned for intraday, and indeed on intraday level, we are going to look in the capacity improvement study, which is coming later. It is one of the topics of the capacity improvement study, in what way we could take into account useful market directions, but in as far as we know what useful market directions are. So into optimizing the capacities which are actually going to be used by the market, and then maybe less optimize the capacities which are not going to be used. So that is something that we are indeed also working on in intraday. But it's not going to be a very exact science, because we don't really know what the market is going to do. If we would know what the market is going to do, if I knew it, I wouldn't be sitting here. I would be making a lot of money with a trader. So we don't really know. So we can only assume what potential market directions are. Okay. So let's dive in the topic of intraday capacity calculation. I already started discussing the topic of the capacity improvement, but first of all, we have the questions that have been raised before the meeting. And so the idea is to go through all the questions that were raised, either during the previous meeting or in preparation of this meeting. So one of the questions was, and okay, I could read the slide or could let you read the slide. The question is, how are we computing the rescaled flow-based domain for the IDCCA? Yeah, this is quite indeed a complex topic. So it's not really, it's not really straightforward to explain it in a few words. So that's why I said it's not very nice to say it, but yeah, the explanation is actually in the methodology, and I don't really have much better to bring than the explanation from the methodology. So it is true that we're not going to use exactly the flow-based domain which comes out of the day-ahead, which has the LTA inclusion. So we're going to restart from the flow-based domain which we had initially before the LTA inclusion, but then we are going to apply some parameters, the RLTA include and the RAMR parameters, which are going to enlarge the flow-based domain for some from TSOs, and every TSO has set these parameters, which are, yeah, in some cases very much like what we already have seen in other time frames. In some cases they are a little bit different, but they are all in the table there. So these are the numbers that we can present. So yeah, it's difficult to go further than that on this question. I can give some examples, but it would then again be examples of ATC extraction, which you already gave last time, and which is probably not really the answer to your question. And so maybe it's better to just clarify what exactly you still need to know. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
So just answering to your question, thanks. So indeed we were able to see all of these methodologies and the parameters that you published, and I think that was really helpful for us.
Okay.
So the main steps, we understand them. We rescaled the PTDF on one hand, we rescaled the LTA. We also do some capping on the side. Really, the question here, I think, when we initially wrote it, was a bit more specifically written into. There is this one step where we have to merge the LTA with the PTDF, because in essence, we have an iterative extraction algorithm that can only accept this one input, sorry. The ballast way of doing it in the day-ahead doesn't really fully work. And so for us, this integration of merging the LTA into the PTDF is not something that's necessarily super trivial, because you have a bilateral domain against a zonal domain. And what we were interested in here is to have a bit of the pseudocode or a bit of the mathematical way you integrate that. Because the LTA margin approach, I think there is also one deck, a very old deck that explains it back in the day-ahead days when this was still employed. But in the context of the intraday, I don't think we have any material that explains that. So that was, let's say, to refine a bit the question.
Yeah. I'm afraid that I'm not going to be sufficiently expert to respond to that today, but you can write it down maybe for me, and I can bring it back to the experts and then provide you an answer in the coming days on that.
Because indeed, the question we asked at the last core CG, so if we could have an answer, I think that would be...
To pinpoint exactly the point that you want to know, which is the link between LTAs and PTDFs, then I can have an expert look at that and then provide you a more concrete answer on, because they also didn't know exactly, okay, what is exactly now the question, so we're trying to answer, but apparently not exactly what you were looking
it a bit
for.
More extensively also.
Yeah, so if you pinpoint exactly what you need, then we can give you an exact answer.
Okay, will do, thanks.
So, is that it?
Jeroen?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Apologies because I've missed the last couple of core CG meetings and some of my colleagues were present, but maybe a question from me around the relevance of the LTA inclusion in the intraday capacity calculation methodology. So I understand its relevance in the day-ahead capacity calculation methodology, not for flows, purely for financial like balance of the TSOs. Why do we keep it in the intraday calculation? So this is like with FTRs everywhere in the core region, this becomes strictly a question of trying to balance the congestion rent and the LTTR revenues. So why does it still have an impact in the intraday timeframe?
Well, in the later intraday timeframes, it will not. So it is really just for the IDCCA, and it is to keep a little bit a link with what was done for the day-ahead calculation. Otherwise, you dissociate completely the IDCCA from the DACC, and you get results which are completely different. So and to avoid that, we have still included, but we have tested what was safe to include, what was not safe to include. Into a repeat of the calculation at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so which is not very far from 12. So we don't really have much new information. It was really just keep it a little bit logically aligned with the.
We are here in the philosophy indeed with IDCCA. We are calculating the leftovers from the day-ahead capacities. And in the day-ahead capacities, the LTA domain is part of the capacity set. And you make a fair point, and that's also a point that is for the reflection of the long-term file. Is it indeed needed to keep this link between financial world and an operational time frame? You are referring to this LTA inclusion?
But I see how like there can be a debate on the day ahead, but I understand why it's there at the moment and historically, but also still how it can be useful. Now it's also kind of, it helps also understand why it's still partly there at the very least in the first calculation frame today. Thank you.
Well, as written there on the screen, yeah, indeed. So the more logical step is to take out LTA everywhere.
Debated.
But yeah, to be debated and then to analyze what the result of that means. Yeah.
I'm just mentioning it to underline that we are in this debate for long term with an open mindset from TSO side.
We can skip the example slides, I think, because they're not really treating the question, and move to the next questions. Indeed, yeah. So is there a planned possibility to still publish results in case of fallback on regular location of JAO? So yeah, our answer is that indeed fallback results are already published when there is a domain fallback. So that should be solved now. Maybe it was not solved at the moment that the question was asked, but in the meantime, it should be okay. Is there a fundamental reason for capacities not to be published on ENTSO-E transparency platform in case of delay? Yeah, this is related to settings in the different toolings. So again, the whole detail is on the slide, but it means that the tools send capacities between one platform to another, and if you don't respect a certain timing, then the tool is not sending the capacity anymore. So at the moment, XBit is configured that TSOs can update capacities until 255 and here for IDA 1 and until 955 for IDA 2. Meaning, yeah, I can do no more than just read what is there, but everybody can just read what is there. So ETP will again need to be updated with new capacities after the IDA. Yeah.
Are there follow-up questions on these answers?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
So
sometimes, like, if the process doesn't go perfectly right, sometimes you like need to check the real value is on Java. Sometimes the real value is on so this may be a question of there will be updates in the future where everything will be coherent. In the meantime, if there can be a flag that, well, like for instance on ETP, this value has not been updated. If that can be a quick fix, but that's really to bring to the ETP working group. But yeah, like for a market participant, like whether and that can be like to make sure that what you're seeing on a screen or extracting from an API, you know whether it's updated value or not. Yeah, probably be.
as I understand the answer now, mostly, almost always, it is okay. So,
Sure.
so it would really not be okay if we really go very close to 2155, which has not happened yet. So maybe it's just more a theoretical question than a practical question. And also in the meantime, it has been, it has been clarified to us that we will not provide capacities after 21 ever. So at least not as long as we don't have IDCCC. So the next IDCC step. So that means that normally we will always be on time for the file which is sent to ETP.
The conclusion is we should really avoid that this happens, this delay beyond 2155. It hasn't occurred. Anyhow, this is not something that is acceptable, also not on NOA side. We'll be doing it in the future. So it's a theoretical situation.
Risks are not like that's something that we price.
Yeah.
Okay. To be clear, we are not doing this right now. So right now we are not going beyond 2155. So if there would be an issue in capacity calculation, taking us beyond a deadline, it's fallback. Yeah. That's why I'm saying it's theoretical because it's not in practice.
Yeah, you realize that about it.
Yes.
That was the point indeed, yeah.
Post go live.
Yeah. Post go live. Next question. I'm looking at another slide on that.
But didn't we finish the slides with the questions? Or? Okay.
Well, there is still the communication API updates, but there I was just going to answer that it's Java competence. So we have discussed this with Java on the impact of API changes, and so yeah, we will continue to follow this up, but it is not in our hands. That is the main point of this question. When will ATC validation limits for IDC A and B be published on Java? The implementation and tests are still ongoing. Yeah, so a new version of application tool will be deployed in very shortly. Yeah, so we're talking about weeks, and once it is ready, you will have a market message. Then we can go to the next slide. Okay, some KPIs. I hope that I have the most important ones here. We put some of them in annex, I suppose, the KPIs. Yeah, so we'll just show a few of them on IDCCA. Well, the only thing we can say is that the IDCCA capacities are higher than what we had before go live, because before go live there was nothing. So that means that since the IDCCA go live, you have capacities at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in D-1 to update the day ahead market positions. You can already start updating at after 3 o'clock in D-1, so after the IDA-1. Or at the moment of the IDA-1. The IDCCA, of course, is still using, as discussed earlier, most of the parameters of the day ahead. For instance, also the 10% FRM, given the uncertainties. It is also still using the D2CF. There is no DACF yet available at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in D-1. So that means we have to be very careful with these parameters. But in the framework of the capacity improvement study, which is ongoing, we are looking at these parameters. So at the FRM, at PTDF threshold, at the megawatt RAM threshold. I'm not sure if it will be decided that they can be changed or not, but the only thing I can say now is we are looking at them. On the IDCTB, well, the most clear message there that I can give is that the results since go live give the same results as during the parallel run. So we see the same effect as what we already saw during the parallel run, which is in general that on average, the ATCs delivered from IDCCB are a little bit lower, but not much lower, but a little bit lower than the capacities that we had before using the day-ahead leftovers. But also on average, there are less zero capacities on the borders. So there is more borders with positive capacities than with the day-ahead leftovers. So it's still the same, a little bit of good news, a little bit of bad news, as we already had all the time with the parallel run results. Which is for me a big success, because it means that we keep the trend of the parallel run results and no strange things happened after go live. So the normal continuance is taken, and then we keep on using the methodology in the same way as we were doing during the parallel run. So proving that we can have stability in methodology. So there are a few slides on that. So this one is the mean positive ATCs of, is this IDCCA or IDCCB? This is IDCCB, yeah? Yeah.
There's a question in the chat.
Yes.
Are allocation constraints used in IDAS the same as on day ahead? Already plus minus already utilized flow? Are they used in XBit? No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No, allocation constraints the day ahead, isn't it? So,
as far as I know, we're not using allocation constraints in the intraday.
Yeah, it's a question about the police allocation constraint.
part of the IDCCM, so I would assume.
Part of the ICCM, then it's out. But I don't know by heart. We can check it to be sure.
The question was already asked before, and I got the answer that indeed it is. It was a bit of a strange answer, but the summary of the answer was no, there is no allocation constraint.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So here it's not a comparison slide. It's just showing you the mean positive ATCs that we have had since the go live. So over a period of 4 months, where you see on average over all borders that intraday is delivering something like 700 megawatts of capacity on an average border. On some borders it's more, on other borders it's less. We already had in the previous meeting the message on the German-French border, where it was considered unfortunate that the capacity was lower than what we had before. before the go live. But okay, these are the numbers as they are at the moment. And then on the next slide, it's zooming in on the zero ATC values. So where we can say, well, 80% of the time there are 2 or less borders that have zero capacity. Simultaneously 0 or negative ATCs. No, this is 20% of the time. I think it's written wrongly. Yeah, it's that. It's 20% of the time we have almost no zero capacities, and then for 18 or more borders, so that's half of the borders that are simultaneously zero. That occurs 10% of the time. So that means that in 10% of the time, the market has really used up capacities in a certain big direction, a certain big flow north-south or east-west, meaning that a lot of the capacities have already been blocked by the day-ahead market, and therefore in intraday, of course, there is not much left. But that occurs only 10% of the time. Okay.
Before starting this topic,
Werner?
Yes.
Yeah. Quick question. On the slide 34.
Yes.
So this is. Can you please re-explain exactly what you mean with this graph? So, for example, here on the, let's say on the German to France border, the one we discussed in the past.
So this graph means that on average over the what is it, 120 days or times 24 hours times 4 quarters, that the average capacity given is something like 1,300, 1,400, somewhere in between. Let's say 1,350 megawatt is the average capacity given from Germany to France.
Okay, so this is the value per border, but yeah, there is no comparison with what we discussed in the past, comparison versus what we had in production in the past. Am I correct?
It is lower, so this is what we have discussed.
Yes,
not sure
that's
why we didn't
confirm
put
what
the
we
comparison slide.
Yeah, okay. So that's confirm what we had in a parallel run results.
Yeah, indeed.
That yes. And if I remember on the previous CG in July on the intraday, you were saying that you would assess impact and you would propose some solution like more on a medium term basis at really short term. But is it something you're working on?
Yes, so this is part of the capacity improvement study. So the famous Article 25 of the CTM. So where we are going to also look at how in the ATC extraction can we try to favor the directions which are popular with market parties. And so to favor the popular market directions and to not give capacities in directions that are not used. So that could, well, we have to analyze it, but maybe that would give some additional megawatts on that border. Because it's difficult to predict. Because in ATC extraction, you have, of course, a lot of degrees of flexibility. Yeah? So and you have to estimate which borders you want to give the capacity to. But everybody wants to have capacity, so it's difficult.
Maybe just to avoid confusion, we will keep it fair. So we will not say let's put all the capacity on the French-German border and then put all the other borders to zero. Our main metric will remain the biddings on isolation. That has been as part of our conversation over the last 1.5 years, the key point to monitor. And with what we see as results after the first 3-4 months now in production is that it's quite stable. So it's not something that deteriorated compared to what we were discussing with you together during the parallel run, which confirms that our understanding at the moment of going live and the comfort that we had was the right understanding. Nevertheless, we do have the capacity improvement study. Bernard will explain this more in detail. I think it will be then after the break. And we also have more insight now on what is driving the bidding zone isolation. So understanding of what is the pre-congestion, so that we can use that to targetedly search for measures to improve capacities as part of the capacity improvement study. I just want to made it on the line here that we are not going to now come up with a feature to favorize the French-German border in our in the next step. So it will be.
I understand. It's stable. I agree with you that it's stable with a parallel run result we discussed for the last 6 months. Yeah, absolutely. So that I agree. It's just that it's also confirmed, that what we discussed about. I'm talking about this specific border because this is the one where we highlighted one of the biggest reductions, so on the parallel result versus the previous methodology. So that's why I understand this is, we have to see it as a global welfare gain for all core borders. But wanted to not repeat or reinsist, but rediscuss the fact that on the previous CG it was discussed to have improved methodology or tools in the next months, and from what I understand, it's part of the study that you are conducting.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the improvement is then taking everyone up. We understand each other indeed.
Yeah, remark on, including on those numbers. Following the blackouts that was experienced in the Balkans in late June, there was also some concerns voiced by some market participants in that region, like, okay, like it looks like we have so limited intraday capacity to rebalance ourselves or to import and this kind of things, like very close to real time. Which is something which may be linked also to capacity restriction, not just at those borders, but from a corridor from Northern Europe through Austria, Hungary, etc. Would be interesting to understand, either to confirm or diffuse those ideas, what was possibly the effect of implementing this new capacity calculation methodology on the capacity of the market to balance, or those countries in particular around the Balkans, and talking about Croatia and all the Western Balkan states, like in terms of being able to tap on resources in the rest of Europe close to real time. So if you're doing some ex post analysis, it would be interesting to see, like, if we're seeing indeed significant capacity restriction on the corridors that are leading towards Croatia and the Western Balkans.
I think that's a matter of looking beyond this particular capacity calculation, but then making the link also with how the IDAs are being used and how the capacity evolves, because you speak closer to real time. But that's a point then to pick up together with MCSC, because there are the statistics on the trading itself. But I understand the question. I understand the need for better understanding there. So we will take it with us to MCSC. I think there is a new MCCG meeting also planned. I don't know exactly the date, but there is one now being planned. So on top of us passing on the question, I would then kindly suggest if you could also raise your question over there, so that it's not lost. And then we of course from our side support, provide insights, provide data as well, to help CSC with that analysis.
Your question also to the investigation of the 21st June.
You want to go forward now with intraday or have a short break? Because I think the pre-congested
Yeah, we have two topics still, the pre-congested KPIs and the capacity improvement study, which are closely linked. So I suggest that we first do the break and then tackle these two after the break.
let's do a break until 3 then.
Yes.
Okay.
if they are limiting, which borders are they limiting? Sometimes some borders are always limited, like obviously the lines which are the big transport corridor between France and Germany, which we all know is Vichy, Ennsdorf, Uchtelfangen. This one comes out as very much on top in this statistics, and this is related to specific maintenance which was going on in a part of this period in the French grid, which made this more limiting than usual. So you see the 17.9%, and you see that, well, when it is limiting, it is always limiting France, Belgium, France, Germany, and Belgium, Netherlands, and then it is sometimes limiting the other borders. So you have other ones, maybe on the next slide. Wait, on slide 44, I have the description of the different lines. The second one that came out, C1 and C2, Porti de Fier and to Rezita, is Romania, Hungary. So it is impacting a border in only one direction, but it is impacting it 14% of the time. Then you have a line in SEPS, which is limiting exchanges in the neighborhood of Slovenia. And there are quite a lot of borders in the neighborhood of Slovenia. So if that line is limiting, you will see that it is limiting quite a lot of lines, quite a lot of borders. You have another one that is of no surprise to me, but maybe to others it is Diele-Meeden, which is in the north of Germany, between Germany and Netherlands. This is mostly triggered by the huge amount of offshore that you still, of course, have in the north of Germany and in the sea. Which has to be evacuated over the grid towards the south, and which is causing congestions and inside of Germany and also on the borders of Germany towards other countries. And then you have another line. That one is Slovenia. Sorry, I missed. And then you have one in Slovakia. So I had one in Slovenia and one in Slovakia, which is also limiting, and that is on a part also because it is close to Poland and with the Czech Republic and with Croatia. So there it is also limiting. This was the third bullet, and the one of Slovenia that I mentioned is the fifth bullet. So this will help us now to focus. Okay, now we can take them one by one. Okay, what can we do about this Kneck, Vichy, Uchtelfangen? Well, what kind of remedial actions could we additionally put in the IDCF or in the DACF? Non-costly remedial actions, costly remedial actions. So which remedial actions do we put in there so that this line becomes less congested in the model? So it means that we don't have to look at other lines, we look at this one. We look at the Portil de Fier Zita line, and what can we do about that? And the idea is that if we can reduce the congestions on these lines, then we will see a natural inflation of the flow-based domain. So the potato will become bigger. We'll be able to slice a bigger block out of the potato, and so that's way to help increase the capacity. And mostly the idea is that this will help to eliminate, this may be a big word, but at least reduce the bidding zone isolation. So that is the big point. If we see Diele-Meeden coming out very often in one direction, then we know, okay, that means that probably if we put the PSTs a little bit more in the opposite direction, that could help reduce this disconnect coming out of the model. So this is where we are. It sounds obvious once it is shown and once it is on the table, but it was quite a lot of work and quite a lot of reflection on how to make something that is actually useful. So very happy to say that we put some very good experts on this, and they came up with this, and this will be very helpful in the continuing of the capacity improvement study to come up with targeted improvements on the methodology. Yeah. So I've condensed a little bit the story, but everything is in the slides, and you will be able to read it more in detail.
Any questions?
One point on those is like if you find way of having better remedial actions for decongesting or having less congestion of those corridors, then I guess there is the question of why aren't they also used on the dead stage? And if they are also used on the day stage, then you're gonna be in the same situation in intraday where you've already fully utilized it. So isn't it just a discussion between withholding capacity at the day ahead level so that there is more at the intraday level? Yeah, why would we do that basically?
Well, I wouldn't say that, of course. In theory, a model like this could also be used in the ahead, but don't underestimate the complexity of this. We are looking now at intraday, which is kind of a zone around a market result. And so you have already a lot of market activity that has taken place in the ahead, and now you're looking around a certain market point and see what you can still optimize. This is something for which this can be a quite efficient model. Is it also efficient when you look at the complete market in the ahead, where you don't know anything yet? You don't know where the market is going to, and I think then you will see a much bigger list of congestions coming out, and much more difficult to find out really in which direction you have to target. It is sometimes difficult. If the market goes in one direction, you have to push the PSTs. You have to make them go like that. If the market goes in the other direction, you have to make the PSTs go in the other direction. Same with remedial actions. It could be that remedial actions that you think are good turn out to be bad because the market is going in a direction that you did not expect. So it is not that obvious to say, okay, these remedial actions would already have been put in the ahead time frame, because we don't know yet in which direction the market is going to go.
You're trying to, right, with the net position forecast?
We're trying to, but it's a blunt instrument. I'm sure that market parties have much better instruments than we have. We are only TSOs, so it's your business. You're doing this 24 hours a day, or maybe not, but at least 8 hours a day. You're predicting in which direction the market is going to go, so that you make the most money. We're just doing a small effort, honestly.
Can we go a step back to slide 39? Because your assumption, Olivier, that we are not using the remedial actions in the ahead, or not using all the potential, I would like to challenge that, because what is happening actually is that we are obliged to do so, using all these remedial actions to ensure that the minimum capacity targets need to be achieved. And this challenge that we are facing, it is this challenge with parallel processes. It's remedial actions that we have been modeling in the ahead to ensure these capacities are safe. When the market then uses the capacities, by the time that the IDCC process starts, that not all of these remedial actions are yet identified and in the grid model of a starting point of IDCB. And that's a challenge of these parallel processes. And it's this set of remedial actions that we are trying to catch up, that we are trying to identify and find a way to get them in. So it's not a story of there are remedial actions that we hold in our pockets and that we don't give to the ahead. It's a story of we have used them for the ahead to give capacity to the market, and we are missing some of them in reality when the market has used this capacity, when we are in the intraday time frame. And then we're finding a way to get them earlier on in the process. It's more this, you can call it parallel processes, you can call it missing remedial actions in the grid model, but it's not withholding that we are doing in the ahead.
My point is that if you gave everything to the day ahead and your net position forecast was correct, let's assume that, then you won't find anything else in intraday, right?
In addition, indeed.
Yeah.
So, and that's something that we will not be able to solve with
kind of an unsolvable problem.
Part of it.
Yeah, in that case.
Yeah. If the market has used up all the capacity, then it has used up all the capacity.
The end was 70% delivered, and if it was consumed, then there's nothing left, and nothing can change this.
That's for sure. We're not going to invent new capacity.
I think here with a new indicator, this is not distinguished if this case here is happening or not. So there could be cases where a CNEC is identified, but full capacity was given and used. then there's nothing to criticize. But I guess it's more a special case that this happens. Or I don't know.
No, it can indeed be. Some of them in the list could be indeed because it is more than 70% of market flow already, which means yeah, okay.
So this is the example of the connect number 3, where we have used remedial actions at the day-ahead stage to make sure that the capacity is safe that we could provide to the day-ahead market. The day-ahead market took this direction, and at the time of start of IDCCB, this connect number 3 is still overloaded. So connect number 1 and 2, we have secured the remedial actions after the use of the day-ahead market of the capacity. But so connect number 3, we are still missing it. Our process is not yet complete of day-ahead security analysis. And this is what we try then now to identify and catch up. So that the red line becomes again a black line, not being overloaded. But there will indeed always be limitations, like even if you use, if identified all the remedial actions that you need to secure the grid, there can still be connects that are 100% loaded because they have been fully used by the day-ahead market.
So that there's always at least one connect that is pre-congested, because otherwise you basically you have to have a limit.
There is full price convergence, then you still have capacity in different directions.
Yeah.
If there is price divergence in the day-ahead market, then indeed there will be a connect that is already fully used.
Okay. Any no further questions? Then the study.
Did this help you to give more insight regarding, the pre-congestion, the BDN isolation? Because we did this, we had a discussion on it in the past, and you asked us to provide more insights on it. Is this helpful for you?
I guess the list is no surprise, right? I think we already see that from the day ahead. Like, these are the all very well-known critical branches. But I think the approach of your approach of trying to identify areas and then addressing area per area, I suppose is a good approach. Yeah. Maybe one question I'm still wondering is, like, I know that there is a lot of the 70% minimum that is ensured through costly remedial action at the day-ahead stage from the Germans, and I'm wondering if those, to what extent those remedial action are then implemented in the intraday capacity calculation once they have been identified, or is it the costly ones? Or is it still something that is kind of kept for the last minute?
That's indeed then, it should come through the bottom row. They had security analysis, so it's in that process where, if needed, these redispatch should be integrated in the grid model. And of course, knowing that this process today takes until midnight, sometimes at 8:15, it will not only be some PST setting missing, but can also be redispatch missing. So when we say we are searching for the remedial actions that are missing at 8:15 but would be there by midnight, it's also the redispatch that we are looking for.
A question of timing. Like, if the DACF process was a bit faster to implement the costly and non-costly, you would have less problem on the isolated bidding zones. In theory, yeah.
Then the only between bracket limitation that is left is if the day-ahead market has used already everything, then nothing can be given anymore.
So how is it foreseen to address that timing issue of having those security analysis process being faster somehow?
There's only 24 hours in a day, and so the market closes at 12 o'clock. and then afterwards all the nominations will happen. You have the international nominations, the local nominations, production nomination, load nominations, everything will have to happen. Then you have to build the day-ahead congestion forecast, and then you have to start analyzing the necessary remedial actions to make the day-ahead congestion forecast safe. And all steps take time. So that is the point that at the moment it is difficult to find still some room in this very full day after 12 o'clock to still find time to make things faster. But we're looking at how we can still increase speed at some
Isn't it
points.
because there is still a lot of manual actions in this security analysis process?
From your background, you know that. From your background, indeed, you know that there is. And that's why we are doing a short-term track and a long-term track. And the long-term track is the implementation of the WASC methodology.
As a OPF in it, and
which will take some more time. And on the short-term track, we have two concrete things. So in the introduction with the roadmap, I said next year IDCC will come, June 25, sorry. And IDCC is then taking all of these actions that are there by midnight, taking that into account and releasing the capacities for 3/4 of the day.
Yeah.
And the other measure is with the capacity improvement study, we are trying to find targeted remedial actions, non-costly, that we could still try to fit in.
You would still lose the first hours of the day, right?
The first 6 hours are not covered by IDCC, but we also have, as I said, the capacity improvement study that we are running. So we are trying to do the maximum and not just wait until WASC is implemented to already make progress next year on that. So you will see IDCC with the parallel run results then coming out, and you will also see the results of our capacity improvement study, which are then the basis to also make a further amendment to the IDCCM. I'm putting emphasis here to make sure that for us it's important. We want to be proactive here. We want to find measures and get a bit, despite the limitations that we have of the current process framework, try to get the maximum out of it.
And maybe one question is that in the D-2 process, the Germans in the IVA validation is already attesting for remedial actions with this DaVinci tool. Are those kind of feeding back into the DACF process, or is it like a new start when we create the DACF and then we try again to find them? Is there, like, as an idea, is it something that is feeding back to the DACF process at the moment, the DaVinci tool results, or it's not the case and they restart basically the whole analysis process from at 6 p.m. with the DACF from some kind of a neutral DACF?
Anyone has the pure operational experience that can complement. There is no direct link to my knowledge. Maybe it gives some inspiration on my operator side because it is some manual coordination. But this is kind of a good hint. Look also at the information you have from the day ahead stage to to focus your efforts. So I think that's also a good hint for us to take back in the capacity improvement study. But there is no automatic link today, no. It's also a completely new grid model in the end. That can yeah.
That's a nice bridge to the improvement study, I think. Then
everything has been said already. So.
Thanks for the questions and the feedback. Yeah. It's very relevant.
It is, yeah. It's for sure that we're not going to reinvent the wheel in terms of remedial action estimation or optimization. So we're going to take again the methodologies that already exist and see how we can apply them to have already some remedial actions identified before the IDCCB. starts. So that is one of the tracks in the capacity improvement study. But maybe just to introduce it again. So we have discussed so in the approval of the capacity calculation methodology. So we have discussed a long time on how to move forward, and then we came up with the Article 25, where it was then identified that we will do a capacity improvement study, which with the intent to see where in the methodology we can still improve the way that we calculate capacities, and especially on those lines where we are not yet at a 70% stage. On the lines where we are already giving 70%, there is not much that can be done. But on lines where we are a bit below, there we can see how we can improve the capacity that can still be given to intraday. So in detail on the next slide, there is the overview of everything that we're going to try to do. And so it is linked in different blocks on top to the articles 25.2 and 25.3, and in the bottom there is more concrete things on what we're actually how we are actually translating that in work packages, let's say, that we are currently busy or working on. So on a high level, so Article 25.2 is in the common assessment, is to see how we can ignore marginal PTDF values when we convert flow-based to ATC, how we can remove interconnectors with non-core bidding zones, and how we can activate remedial actions closer to real time. And on the individual assessment, it's more about further potential refinements of capacity calculation principles. It's about targeted investments that contribute to minimum capacity requirements, and it's about alternate bidding zone configuration. So that's the articles as they are written. So practically, what are we going to do? We are looking at ATC parameter optimization. So indeed, so probably not the FRM, because that one we already pushed to the 5% value, and it is difficult to see how it can still be improved for IDCCB. But we are looking at the PTDF thresholds. We're looking at the ATC, the RAM threshold, sorry, and some other parameters which are in the process. So yeah, you could also say it's a parameter, the removal of interconnectors of non-core bidding zones. So we're checking what that brings in terms of results. Does it actually improve the capacities, yes or no? And does it create risks for the operational security? And this will be the same questions that are coming back for each point that we are going to tackle. Does it improve the capacities? Does it make sense to do it? Because if there's no improvement, then why would you do it? And on the other hand, does it create additional risks for operational security? Yes or no? So if we see an improvement, so it's kind of like two axes again. So if you see a lot of improvement and very little risk for operational security, then it's a clear green light to go for it. If you see very little improvement and a lot of risk for operational security, but okay, maybe that's not very likely, but you could see a lot of improvements, but because there's also a lot of new congestions that you create because of that, which cannot be solved, then it's probably not a green light. So it is always weighing one to the other. Another thing is about ATC extraction, as I already said. So we're going to look to see if we can push the ATC extraction in the direction of favoring those directions which are mostly used by the intraday, so that we are not giving capacity to market parties of which you say, okay, you put this on in your store, but I'm not interested in that product. So why do you try to sell it? So we will try to sell the products that you're actually interested in. So then in medium term, these are short-term improvements. In the medium term, we're going to look at PST optimization. We're going to look at remedial actions, and then it's not only non-costly, but also costly remedial actions. In the slides, we've put still the word optimization. I'm trying also to use the word estimation. It's more, a full optimization process. It's not going to be before 8 o'clock, but we can have an estimation process where we say, okay, most likely the remedial actions that we're going to have to put there are of this order of magnitude. and then you can put an order of magnitude into the model and see what it gives. So this is a way forward. We're working on process and IT optimization. The shorter that you can make the process, the later the ACF you can take. Yeah? So you said, okay, let's try to make the process shorter of putting all the remedial actions in the DACF. We can also try to make the IDCC shorter, so we can take a DACF which comes later in the night, in the evening. So all these things we are looking at. And another thing we are looking at, and that is it's not really the introduction of virtual capacities, but it's testing virtual capacities. So it is an enlargement of the flow-based domain, where you're going to test. Okay, now that we have enlarged it, is it actually possible with a validation process? Is it possible to work with increased ATCs on certain borders where you have a potential bidding zone isolation? You say, okay, let's try to put an ATC there and see if we have the remedial actions to make that work. And so that is instead of looking for the actual remedial actions, is saying, hey, let's try out an ATC and see if it works from security analysis point of view. So all these things we're looking at. And in terms of targeted investment and alternate bidding zones, there we're going to provide some information on, as foreseen in Article 25.3, in how far the foreseen investments, which are on the table at the moment, help to increase capacities in intraday, yes or no, and in how far any alternate bidding zone configuration, which is on the table at the moment in the bidding zone study, in how far that helps to create additional capacities in intraday. And so for that, there were templates that were created to show what kind of capacities come out of that. So it's quite a lot of work. Again, more explanations are on the next slides. We can quickly run through the next slide to see if there are things that I've forgotten. But I think I've said most of these things. So one of the big ones that you will see is the first two bullets are PST optimization and remedial action optimization. So there we really have a team of experts working on that to see which processes that actually already exist that we could reuse to already establish some kind of first set of potential remedial actions that will most probably indeed be necessary in real time, so that you could already put in the ACF of 8 o'clock in the evening, in as far as that is possible. So this is trying to reuse existing processes, as you said earlier already. So there are some already pre-existing processes that could be reused for this. So this is being investigated, and then it's also being investigated in how far this actually helps. So it's trying to put the remedial actions indeed as soon as possible into the DACF. That's the first two bullets, and the third bullet is, as I said, is making the IDCC process shorter so that we can get more time to put remedial actions into the DACF before it's being used by IDCC. Then the next slide. So that is about increasing the flow-based domain. So you're going to reintroduce virtual capacities into the flow-based domain, but they're not going to be permanent virtual capacities, let's say, because there will be the possibility to take them out again if it doesn't work. Yeah? So the idea is just to, instead of starting with the flow-based domain that we're starting now, is to say we're going to artificially enlarge it, run the local validation processes, and see if it works. And in case it works, then it's great. We made it bigger, and we can give more ATCs to the market. If we stumble on operational security issues that we cannot solve with remedial actions, then unfortunately we have to reduce it back to where it was, or maybe a bit more, but it could be that we have to reduce it back to where it was. So that is an alternative to the explicit adding of remedial actions, which is in the previous slide. So to be clear, it is not, we're not going to reintroduce virtual capacities. It's just a test to see if it works, and if it doesn't work, we take them out again. Then on the next slide, ATC extraction, parameter optimization, those are all the different things that you can still improve inside the methodology to see if we can still tune a little bit the parameters without creating operational security issues. The different parameters which are in the system, and to see whether we can still tune the ATC extraction for focusing on the most useful market directions. So that is, I think, in short, everything that we're trying to do. We've split all the work up in five work packages. So that means that we have 5 teams from the IDCC experts, which are working on 5 different packages. Some of them have meetings every week. Some of them it's every 2 weeks. So there is a very strong follow-up on progress. And so we expect to deliver. Formally, we will deliver everything by the 1st of April, but I think we will be able to already say, okay, by end of this year, beginning of next year, we should have our first insights on how much, where will we end up, and how much can we improve. Is there a lot of improvement possible? Is there not a lot of improvement possible? It's too early to say, but by beginning of next year, we should have a first view on that. Okay, that's in short what I had to say about the capacity improvement study. Yes.
A short question. I mean, it looks interesting and good also that you're trying to balance incremental improvement versus burden and what that may have as an effect. Just on one of those last points, the removal of interconnectors from non-core bidding zones, and I don't really understand probably how they are taken into account at the moment. But isn't that the exact opposite movement that you're doing with advanced hybrid coupling in their heads, where they're properly taken into, like, they're not taken into account as a was a given in the RefProg, but really like included in the calculation? And
Not sure about that. I would say that advanced hybrid coupling is still at the border of core. So I'm not sure if you can call them non-core borders.
This is really like something completely outside.
Yeah.
Are we talking like of which non-core interconnector we're talking about? Is it both Swiss tie lines or France-Italy tie lines that are in the flow-based domain at the moment that you try to remove?
Maybe to sketch, and but I have to help me, because for me it's far in my memory, but the scope of network elements connects that can be part of a capacity calculation are also indeed the tie lines from core bidding zone borders to the non-core bidding zone borders. So like France, Italy, or Austria, Italy, for example, would be able to be in there in the capacity calculation. When it comes to advanced hybrid coupling, it's another way to express the exchange over these borders onto the inside core connects. So that's already a separate scope of connects. So we are really here on the connects that are just looking on and just beyond the border. So it's the first next substation that we land on. And then here it was one of the points that was added by ENTSO in his decision of please look into this, maybe it can be worthwhile. So it's indeed removing this outer layer of connects and see, does this help? It's separate from implementing advanced hybrid coupling or the exchanges on these borders, because that is the impact on the inner circle of the core connects.
Yes. So you can't ignore them. So
that's what we need to see. Okay. Can we ignore them or not?
But from the list of connects you just published on the one that are generally causing the isolation, none of them was it doesn't seem very promising.
That's what I would say as well. But we are going to analyze. We are analyzing.
We are obliged to analyze it.
Yeah. It was not our first. From our side, it was not our first priority to improve the capacity. No.
It was the last bullet point on the last slide.
Yeah.
IDCC topic then.
There's one last slide. Where we are going. And announcing my next go live. Thanks for the congratulations for the previous go lives, but we are not stopping. The train has departed the station. It's now moving at full speed. So we are going ahead with an IDCCC go live for June of next year. And so what we just want to announce here, okay, again, there is a whole explanation in the slides on all the border conditions. What we intend to do is that we will start a kind of a short internal parallel run in beginning of December of this year still. So that's that's very soon. That's in 1.5 months. And then by mid of December, which is in 2 months, we start already the external parallel run. Why so very short? Because the IDCCC from a pure process point of view, a pure TSO process point of view, it's not very new. It's doing almost exactly the same thing as with the IDCCB, but at a different moment in time and with different input data. So we are going to use an IDCF instead of a DACF, but apart from that, the whole process is going to be the same. Of course, the IT needed to be developed because, as you know, the IT systems work with communication channels and with message flows. And all these had to be developed into the common calculation tool. But once this development is ready, which is expected by end of November, that the release of the tool, which will include the IDCCC, will then be ready. We can start very quickly with an external parallel run. We are already doing tests, of course, offline to see how the mechanism is working. So and it is working. So. At the moment, the experts are very confident that this will work. Of course, unexpected things can always happen. So it could be that I will have to come back with sitting like this. So sorry, we will have a few months of delay, but for now we are expecting that it should be okay, so that we would still be able to go live with a 6-month parallel run in June of next year, and then we will have updated capacities at what is expected now around 4 o'clock in the morning, and these capacities will then be used directly in the continuous trading for all the trading hours from 6 o'clock until midnight. So 18-hour time frame.
We'll have a bit of a ramp-up approach like we have seen before with the maybe the first weeks, not 7 or 7 business days will be successful. But we think it's a better trade-off to start earlier with the external parallel run and not keep it too long on our side.
We will start immediately with the daily publication. So it could be indeed that on a certain days there is no publication because it fails. Okay, and then we will send a message saying, okay, there was an issue found and it's being solved, and voilà. But then the next day you will again have a result. We found this was easier because that doesn't mean that we didn't have to create a new process of publication. We only have the daily process, and so we would immediately use the daily publication process.
Questions?
Maybe one question in terms of transparency for this IDCCC, and I guess B also in general. We just discussed how important those remedial actions are going to be for releasing capacity or not, if they manage to be found in time for either B or C. And for us, it's very untransparent whether they have been found or not been found, because there is no publication for that. And what is going to be really the kind of explanatory features of whether the domain has been able to be enlarged or not enlarged. So is there something foreseen for publishing those remedial actions that have been implemented both for IDCCB and IDCCC? I understand that they are not found by the remedial action optimizer. They are more like embedded into the DACF or IDCF. But they kind of are key for us market parties to know, because we can, we can see which remedial actions are impactful. We can also know, okay, if this plant is not available tomorrow, this remedial action is not going to be available tomorrow. We can do analysis. And we do that for, I mean, in the day ahead, we do have some transparency about remedial actions, more from the remedial action optimization. But here we have nothing. So
yeah, we will look into that. That's the only thing I can say today. Is we write down the question and we look into what is possible. It's not an easy question, or it's not an easy answer.
Well, is it because there is a security reason in publishing them, or like what is not easy?
Outside the IDCC process, so I think we also need to look. It's more like a WASC-related question. So I think we'll start from looking back at WASC methodology. What's the level of transparency that is being set on there? And then we need to see, can we project it already to the existing processes which are not coordinated on a core level, because it's still the manual experimentation, different processes gluing things together. So it may not be so straightforward as you think, that we have like one database already with everything inside. So there are the two questions regarding what's the level of transparency we are working into with the target implementation, and then what are limitations in data that we are facing. And then this is outside the IDCCB project. So that's also why I cannot immediately respond. We need to check with the colleagues that are working on these operational processes and WASC. Yeah.
Well, we don't have any market platforms for the ROS, right?
No, but it's part of our scope here.
So
but I'm just saying we need to take it back and think about it.
Speak to anyone, right?
No, but it's part of our framework here. We will look into it.
The DACF creation process is a complex process, and IGF is even more complex. At some point, some things will be evident to say it's a remedial action or it's not a remedial action. On some things it will be on the border. Was this part of the base case of what is a remedial action? And at some point you will not know whether something is a remedial action or a base case, and it becomes I'm just trying to explain why it is complicated.
For some, I agree. But if you take PSTs, for example, publishing all the tab positions that have been used in DACF, IDCF, doesn't seem to be, it's very clear, right? What needs to be done.
Well, you can publish the tab positions. Well, there's some training here. Sorry. We'll look into that, what is possible, and what.
Now,
but it's not an easy question. But
there should already be, and it just comes now to my mind, an overview of remedial actions that are used in day-ahead capacity calculation and that are used in the current DACF process. I think it's a reporting requirement. It's maybe part of the annual reporting that we do.
It's static, right? It's not this hour we've used tab position number 5. This hour we've redispatched that plant. That's more what I was looking for. Right?
Okay, but
we will look into it. Deliver the IDCF, and then you can look for yourself. That would be great. That would be great. Then you can do the calculation yourself. What I can say is our intention is that we will use the IDCF of 215 in the morning for the IDCCC, and that IDCF is it's really the first one that we are quite sure that it contains. I would not say all remedial actions, but all remedial actions that could be that could be coordinated before going into the real time frame. So that's the complete IDCF. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe one thing to mention here, like when the ROSC will be implemented somewhere in the future, the outcomes of ROSC will be then used as an inputs for intraday capacity calculation. And like, maybe it's clear, maybe it's not. I just want to say like, there's RAO, yeah, but RAO in ROSC versus RAO in capacity calculation, that's like completely different objective. One is to improve the capacities. One is to maintain operational security. And when ROSC, like there will be day-ahead cruiser and intraday cruisers. And after approval of remedial action in ROSC, these remedial actions will be included in the CGMs or in IGMs, and this will be a new base case. And then this will be used as an input for intraday capacity calculation. It was also decided if IDCC needs an RAO. That was question. And the conclusion was like, since they will use the inputs from ROSC, that they will skip this process. Or I don't know, maybe Beran can tell more about this. But that's my understanding. Like,
now you push the ball back to me.
I think we will not provide clarity here enough. But I think ROSC is most probably up for a next consultative group at some point next year.
Indeed, once ROSC is there, it will provide the input data to the IDCC, and that will include, of course, the complete security analysis which has been done in the ROSC process. So it will include all the remedial actions that have been found during that analysis. Yeah.
Those are the ones that like be really physically activated compared to those that are considered in the validation and in IVAS, which is more like theoretical.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
My side, that was all.
So far for IDCC then?
Maybe then just a quick last and perhaps easier remark. So we raised the question earlier on transparency with respect to the API, and you mentioned rightly so that that's more the scope of JAO. But so just to note that indeed it would be nice if for this next go live IDCCC, that coordination is done a bit more tightly, so that, I mean, for the first go live, for example, we got the URL of the API only one day previously. The format of the data was changed compared to the external run. So for us, it was really difficult, almost live, to adjust to that new data format. So I think it would be great if the data format can be set long in advance, and then there's no operational issues on the day to have to readjust our systems.
I understand.
We said that already indeed previously that it was an improvement point, and Bernard is taking it on board in the project planning. So we'll do better this time.
Okay, then we are at the AOB. In the AOB, there's a lot of Q&A, answers to questions provided beforehand. Maybe what's left for now is that I think, Zeli, we need to discuss the planning for next year. I think having a physical CG is worthwhile, and maybe we should pick up the momentum from this meeting and at least organize one next year. And then let's tune the planning a bit to maybe deliverables and planning in core, so that we can also have meaningful information on the table.
We'll organize something around mid-November that we set for following up the events hybrid coupling with those studies. And then around the first quarter, we would have to fine-tune that in function of how then the events hybrid coupling would have progressed, where we are with IDCCC and the capacity improvement study. I think this is coming around the bridge from Q1 to Q2, so around March, April. let's take that as preliminary idea and refine it in function of how the projects progress.
Then thank you very much, everybody, for coming here, and everybody that has dialed in. And
one point on the, two more points on the slide. For the default flow rate parameters, the information has been added into the slides, but has also been presented this week already in MESC. So I think that point is covered. But there was also a question regarding the derogation requests and action plans for 2025. So we discussed this also with Anne on the regulatory side, and the process is now indeed ongoing for TSOs to submit it to the NRAs, and then all NRAs in core together will have this overview and need to approve it. So what we will do is, at the end of that process, we will make that overview and share it with you. To be seen where we publish it, maybe on the JAL page on the ENTSO-E website. But point taken, it will be more for December. So by the time that the process has ended, we will then make this overview.
One thing, if I can add in this AOB, is on the JAO, the core forum, Q&A forum. I'm not sure at the moment if there is any guidelines for time to answer. We have a lot of topics that we've created that haven't been answered, and I think it would be good that TSO make a review of all the posts that have been created and are still left unanswered. That I guess one first point, and then going forward, I'm wondering if there could be some kind of commitment from the TSOs to have faster answers on this form.
I think just to come up to that, because I checked the slide, I think there is already a commitment to answer within a month on JAO's side as well. So I don't know if it's in your slide as well.
In the slide, then it's already indeed a rule.
Because what do we do for the topics that have been unanswered for 2 years? Like I wanted, we didn't discuss that too much today, but one thing that on our side is quite important to understand at the moment is the net position forecast methodology that is used for defining the RevProg. And I have a post that I've created 2 years ago for asking for that methodology. And it is still left unanswered. So we're not even talking about a month here, right? We're talking about 2 years. So I mean, I'm reiterating that I would like to have that methodology available as maybe a side note, but generally speaking, yeah, we need much faster answering, if any answer at all, actually.
Yeah, we will have to pick it up internally and see, clean it up probably, because when it's 2 years old, I can imagine that it's somewhere in a bottom of a forum.
Or maybe I don't know if there is a functionality that could be each post can be tagged as resolved or not. Like right now, I think it is not the case. But for you to be able to see what is the backlog somehow, yeah, one thing you could do is have this resolve pending status for each post, and
we will check the backlog, and if things are unclear in the sense of if there are old questions and maybe they have already been answered to CGs, etc., we can close them. And when things are not clear, we'll couple it back to you so that we can have a new reference again. That we don't need to put our effort into questions that have meanwhile been answered. But it will take a bit of investigation and mapping of the last 2 years CG with all the Q&As that we have made. Another way is also to say maybe not every question is as easy to answer, like a methodology for an MPF is different than, okay, can you explain this formula or this point? And the way what we are doing now, moving towards a CG and tackling a series of questions, also creates some efficiency. So we can also think about that. That it's not only purely in the Q&A with 1 month timing, but that it can also be kind of bundled and packaged together, especially if the questions are a bit larger, impactful in terms of scope, and the explanation needs to be more elaborate. Not everything can always be
in a report. I agree. Yeah.
And also, if there are separate processes, like if there's a question asked in the forum, you pick it up in a core CG, it gets answered, but the person that initially asked the question, for example, didn't attend. I think this still has to be a sort of link, so the person who asked the question in the forum can find that answer, because it's been given somewhere, just not in the same spot. So that also can be something we can think of.
Is to mark the post as resolved. You say this has been answered in CG, blah blah blah, slide number 32, and then that's at least that closed. All topics get closed somehow formally on the forum.
But thanks for the feedback. We can work with that, and then come back with a more practical proposal.
I think we have to wish everybody a good weekend and yeah, a good safe trip home if you have to go far. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.